Members, good morning. It's the appointed time. We have a quorum. I call to order the meeting. Welcome to the meeting of the Bills Committee on Buildings Energy Efficiency Amendment Bill 2025. This is the first meeting of the Bills Committee. Let's now invite the administration to join us. The background information in relation to the bill is uploaded onto the LegCo website. Members have already received several papers. Legislative Council Brief EEB 24/26/22PT44. This is the first document. The other paper is the Legal Service Division report on the bill, LC paper number LS28/2025. The Legislative Council Secretariat has also prepared a background brief, LC paper CB-2 638/2025-03. Welcome, representatives from the administration. I'd like to ask members if we need to invite the public and deputations to express their views on the bill. We may consider inviting the public to submit written submissions. Do members agree? If so, the Secretariat will issue a notice on the website of LegCo. We will also inform 18 district councils as per the usual practice. The submissions received will be circulated to members and sent to the administration for a consolidated response. Right, now we start the policy discussion on the bill. We'll look into the pros and cons of the bill as well as the policy intent. I now give the floor to Ms. Polly Kwok, Deputy Secretary for Environment and Ecology, to take us through the bill. Chief Engineer from the EMSD, Mr. Wallace Leung, will take us through the bill using a PowerPoint slide presentation. Members who would like to speak, please press the button. I now give the floor to Ms. Polly Kwok. Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to take members through the Buildings Energy Efficiency Amendment Bill 2025. I'm going to talk about some background information as well as the policy intent. The Buildings Energy Efficiency Ordinance came into operation earlier on. It mainly provides two areas of regulation. For new buildings, the building services installations need to meet the relevant energy efficiency standards. In no more than 10 years, energy audits need to be conducted in order to identify energy saving potential. Over 2,300 buildings and over 15,000 major renovation works of the existing buildings meet the energy efficiency standards. Some 2,700 commercial buildings have already completed the first energy audit. Over half of these buildings have finished the second energy audits as well. It is expected that in 2035, about 540 million kilowatt hours of electricity will be saved every year. In 2023 policy address, it mentions we will further amend the Buildings Energy Efficiency Ordinance. There are 5 main types of amendments under the bill. I'll give the floor to Mr. Wallace Leung, Chief Engineer from the EMSD, in a moment to take members through the major amendments. Subject to the passage of the bill and upon the implementation of the bill, in 2035, an additional 500 million kilowatt hours of electricity will be saved every year. That is equivalent to 150,000 three-person households. Extensive consultation was conducted covering the public, the construction sector, property management, services sector, public organizations, as well as professional bodies. In 2024, we also consulted the Energy Advisory Committee, the Council for Carbon Neutrality and Sustainable Development, and the Advisory Council on the Environment. In January this year, we also consulted the Panel on Environmental Affairs of the Legislative Council. Stakeholders and members of the panel also supported our amendment. Subject to the passage of the bill, there will be two main phases. The first phase will take place 3 months after the passage of the bill. The regime in relation to the registered energy assessors will be implemented, and 15 months after the passage of the bill, we will start the phase 2, the remaining parts of the bill. It is expected that we will put in place all the amendments by 2026. I now give the floor to Mr. Wallace Leung to take us through the bill. He will use a PowerPoint presentation. Thank you. The Buildings Energy Efficiency Ordinance was implemented in 2021. It covers 13 main types of buildings. The building services installations need to meet energy efficiency standards. For the other two types of buildings, they will have to conduct energy audits as per the practice. Building services installations cover air conditioning installations, electrical installations, lift and escalator installations, as well as lighting installations. 5 main amendments are proposed under the bill. The first amendment is to regulate the energy efficiency standards of building services installations for all data centers in Hong Kong. Building services installations need to meet the standards. In recent years, data centers grew rapidly. Their electricity consumption accounts for over 4% of the total electricity consumption of buildings. Standalone data centers and portions of industrial buildings being built as and converted into data centers are covered at the moment. It is estimated that in 2035, an additional 50 million kilowatt hours of electricity will be saved every year. In relation to Amendment 2, requiring more buildings to conduct regular energy audits, we will expand the categories from 2 to 11. On average, there is a reduction of the EUI Energy Utilization Index by 20%. It shows the effectiveness of the energy audits. After our analysis, we find that the energy audit of larger scale buildings is more cost effectiveness. So in addition to data centers, we grant exemptions to small and medium-sized buildings with a gross floor area not exceeding 7,000 square meters. The electricity consumption of the buildings entitled for exemptions only accounts for 10% of the total electricity consumption. After the amendment, however, the total energy consumption of the buildings under regulation will go up from 390 million kilowatt hours per hour to 950 million kilowatt per hour, an increase of 1.4 times. We have also complied with the suggestion of the Security Bureau. There are clauses concerning the exemption from conducting energy audits on the grounds of safeguarding national security. We expect that we'll be able to save an additional 450 million kilowatts of electricity. Amendment 3, shortening the intervals of energy audit from 10 years to 5 years. The cost of the practice of a 5-year interval of energy audit is comparable to that in our neighboring regions, such as the mainland, Singapore, and Tokyo. The cost of conducting an energy audit at 5-year intervals for larger buildings over 7,000 square meter accounts for less than 1% of the annual electricity fee, ranging from 20,000 and 100,000. Energy saving potential identified through energy audits accounts for around 1% to 10% of the total electricity charge. Amendment 4, publishing technical information in energy audit reports. We intend to publish additional technical information, such as the energy efficient information on building services installations, such as the energy efficiency coefficient, year of service, control system, and energy saving potential. We want to let the public know the energy performance of buildings and to encourage the industry to put forward energy saving proposals to expedite the implementation of energy saving measures and to promote the green economy. Amendment 5, including more qualifications eligible for registration as REA, that is, Registered Energy Assessor. Under the ordinance, REAs are statutory professionals who certify the compliance of energy efficiency standards and conduct energy audits. To apply for registration as an REA, one needs to be a corporate member of the Hong Kong Institution of Engineers or a registered professional engineer, or for short RPE, in the electrical, mechanical, environmental, or building services discipline. We propose to add the energy sector to be one of the acceptable disciplines upon the enactment of the ordinance. Back then, the energy sector wasn't included. The industry proposed to include this sector as well. We agreed to it, so we propose to add this discipline as well. And we propose to add the additional discipline, that is the energy sector, to the panel, to the Buildings Energy Efficiency Appeal Board panel, as well as in the disciplinary board panel. We started consultation earlier on. We issued consultation documents in November 2023. Most of the views were supportive of the amendments. We have incorporated the views expressed into the amendments we proposed. We have already sought support from the Energy Advisory Committee, the Council for Carbon Neutrality and Sustainable Development, and the Advisory Council on the Environment. The amendments will be put in place in two different phases. The first phase will take place 3 months after the implementation of the bill, whereas the second phase, after 15 months after the implementation of the bill. The aim is to give the industry sufficient time to make preparations. Thank you, Chairman. This is the end of my introduction. All right, thank you, Mr. Lang. Professor William Wong, Mr. Andrew Lam, Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, Mr. Michael Lee, Mr. Lam Chun-sing, Mr. Tong-Li Tse, Mr. Benson Luk. A total of 7 members have pressed a button to request to speak. I'm going to assign a time limit. Oftentimes, the administration may need a longer time to respond to members. But let me assign a time limit here, 5 minutes each, questions and answers included. Let's start with Professor William Wong. Thank you, Chairman. I'm supportive of the amendments proposed by the administration in relation to the Buildings Energy Efficiency Amendment Bill 2025, especially in relation to covering data centers as well. We all know AI is very energy consuming. In 2023, the global data centers energy consumption reached 6,000 kilowatts per hour. We're expecting that the figure will double in the future. So the conversion of data centers or the use of renewable energy will help Hong Kong to achieve the target of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. The Buildings Energy Efficiency Ordinance regulates 4 main areas. That is air conditioning installations, electrical installations, lift and escalator installations, as well as lighting installations. In data centers, computing technology is the most energy consuming. The energy consumption accounts for some 4.4% of the total energy consumption in Hong Kong. I'd like to note the effectiveness upon the implementation of the ordinance. In addition to air conditioning installations, does the administration study how to reduce the electricity required for the computing processes of AI? Has the administration looked into using renewable energy in data centers? All right, Deputy Secretary, let me first start with the energy or the electricity that we expect to be saved with the implementation of the ordinance.
Our estimate is upon the passage and implementation of the bill, data centers by 2035 can save an extra 15 million kilowatt hours, equivalent to 350,000 3P households. Now, for newly built data centers, we can save 14 million kilowatt hours, and then together with existing converted data centers, we can save in total 350 million kilowatt hours. Mr. Leung? Yes. Well, data centers consume power in two ways. First, the computing system, and second, supporting components such as air conditioning, because cooling is required for operation of data centers. Now, we have covered air conditioning installations. Usually, they account for over half of energy consumption in data centers. We've also got a PEU. The calculation of which is the total consumption of data centers, that is the computing installations and the building services installations divided by the total power consumption. So we will raise the unit or the efficiency. So we have incorporated data center into regulation by means of the bill. What about renewable energy? Have you considered that? Administration, yes. To encourage more data centers to use renewable energy, for standalone data centers, the potential is much higher than data centers accommodated in industrial buildings, where the use of renewable energy is rather challenging. For standalone data centers, EMSD is carrying out a pilot scheme for use of solar energy. So on the facades of buildings, solar power generation technology will be used. So it's just not on the rooftop, but even on external walls of buildings. We see whether photovoltaic panels can be used for absorbing solar energy for power generation to serve the building itself. EMSD is carrying out a trial scheme, which will be where the installation will be completed within this year. We will review the data to see whether it is a financially viable scheme. If confirmed, it can be extended to other buildings covering data centers. Thank you, Mr. Andrew Lam. I support the direction of the bill, but I have two specific questions to ask. You are going to exempt buildings with a GFA of less than 7 million square meters or 7,000 square meters. I have no objection to that. And you have also included new buildings, new types of buildings. The government has taken the need to include like community and municipal services buildings. This is worthy of our support. And as said by the administration, you have covered many existing buildings and new buildings. I'd like to ask the number of buildings that have to take follow-up action upon passage of the bill, and what types of buildings are they? If you cannot provide an answer now, it doesn't matter. You can give us a supplementary paper afterwards. Now, for existing buildings in particular, if they have to convert their existing building services installations, have you got any assessment? At money of the day now, what will be the cost? Of course, it is good for the purpose of carbon neutrality in power saving, but have you worked out the cost to buildings for complying with the new legislation? Can you share the information with us if you have it? Thank you. As explained, there are two types of buildings that require regular energy audits. So now is 2,700 buildings, and if we provided exemption of 7,000 square meters, then there will be a dozen or so, and after the passage of the bill, about 3,000 buildings will have to conduct regular energy audits. The cost of an energy audit can take reference from an business environment assessment done by the EMST recently. The cost will range from $20,000 to $100,000 depending on the size of the building. The most expensive one will cost $100,000. Assuming that it is done every 5 years, the amount to spread over 5 years, the cost will be less than 1% of the power consumption of the building. And there may be some adjustment required without any capital cost. The cost recovery period would depend on the type of conversions. It can range from 1 to 8 years. That's the cost recovery period. What about supercomputing centers? Are they regarded as data centers? Yes, they are covered. I think it is good to repeat those figures because we're concerned that upon passage of the bill, smaller buildings will be exempted because of the exemption, but there are 9 types of buildings newly added to the list. So can you tell us the total number of buildings altogether? 3,000. So although there will be exemptions or new buildings added, so in total there will be 3,000 buildings in addition. So for the first time audit, there will be about 2,700 buildings. So new building types are added, but for buildings with too small GFA, it is not really cost effective to conduct an energy audit. So I think your adjustment is reasonable. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, let me declare I am a senior advisor of Hong Kong Electric Company. We've expressed our views at the Environmental Affairs panel with regard to the amendments. We support them. Now we have got the Climate Action Plan 2050, and 9% of our electricity consumption can be attributable to buildings. So if we can lower the power consumption of buildings, hence power generation, we can be very effective in lowering carbon emission. And as we can see, the industry also supports the proposed amendments. Some of these questions have been discussed at the last EA panel. So 9 new types of buildings will be added to the list requiring regular energy audits. So for new buildings, there are 15 types. There are a few of them not included in the area for regular energy audits. Hotel is one example. As we all know, most hotels are over 7,000 square meters in GFA. I'd like to know the reason why hotels are excluded. And a similar question was asked last time. Globally, people are keen to develop data centers given that they play a pivotal role in INT development. However, we're also concerned about the high energy demand from data centers. Given that the whole world is moving towards carbon neutrality, how can you effectively, or do you have appropriate ways and means to regulate data centers? They have a GEUE. That is the PUE, power usage effectiveness. People all over the world support the development of data centers, but their concern is they consume too much power. So they have a PEU set at 1.3 and 1.2, so that when these data centers are built in a particular place, they should be encouraged to adopt energy efficient BSIs and mode of management. I'd like to know whether you intend to require or to specify PEUs for existing data and newly developed data centers. P.S. Thank you. For hotels and guest houses, we have assessed these premises that are mainly for residential users, so it is quite close to households. And many electrical items are really household items. So we have done the business impact assessment. It is not really cost effective to require hotels and guest houses to conduct energy audits. So we will see whether we can introduce measures for hotels and guest houses to save energy. We intend to adopt a gradual and orderly approach to gradually increase the number of or the types of buildings to be regulated. Perhaps hotels and guest houses will be considered in the next round. And for PEU, may I defer to my EMSD staff colleague. Thank you. For PEU, in my response to a member's question, I said that PEU cover BSIs, building services installations. So data centers will be regulated under the bill. And this will help to lower PEU, that is to save energy. And for the our Hong Kong Green Building Council has got a data center, and together with the industry, we help to promote practices that can promote PEUs. Now, as I said, there are data centers built on mainland and in other parts of the world, and in many places for data centers, new data centers with PUs lower than 1.2, they will not be approved. Yet in Hong Kong, we haven't seen any restrictions yet. So do you intend to gradually lower the PEU limits for new data centers? Thank you.
All right, thank you. DS, I thank Mr. Chen for the question. At this stage, our proposed amendments are quite significant. 75% of the data centers aren't being regulated. That is, standalone data centers and portions of industrial buildings being built as in converted into data centers. We want to cover these types first. Will we consider using PUE to regulate even more buildings in the next phase? We will give it some thought. We believe this is quite a new regulation to the industry, so we'd like to start with this phase first, and then we may consider extending the coverage to more buildings in the next phase. Thank you. Chairman. All right, I'd like to clarify there are two types of buildings being regulated under the energy audits. That is commercial building and composite building for commercial use. If the gross floor area doesn't exceed 7,000 square meters, the whole building is subject to energy audit as well. Can you explain the point of not having to perform an energy audit? Can you give us more information? Thank you. For a data center in a commercial building, it is being regulated at the moment. So our proposed amendment is to add a threshold of 7,000 square meter. If some buildings are smaller than 7,000 square meters, then they won't be subject to regulation. For hotels and guest houses, as mentioned by Mr. Chen, if they fall into the category of a larger building, then they are subject to energy audits as well. Is that right? Yes. Not many commercial buildings have a large portion being used as a hotel or a guest house. Some buildings are commercial buildings, but then a portion of the commercial buildings is used as a guest house. But then there aren't many such cases in Hong Kong. In accordance with the law, the entire building is subject to energy audits as well, and the BSIs, that is building services installations, will have to regulate it. Air conditioning installations, electrical installations, lift and escalator installations, and so on. Those inside the units will not be subject to regulation. Mr. Michael Lee. Thank you, Chairman. This bill is worth our support. This is the first step only, however. We just now talked about PUE and carbon auditing. How can we achieve complementarity? This is exactly how we can achieve the target of carbon neutrality. As far as I'm concerned, we are scrutinizing this ordinance or this bill. And I understand you're going to study an award and penalty mechanism. So what if I'm going to do nothing after 5 years? Will it work? Can I just do part of the requirements? Do we have a whole set of mechanism, a whole set of process? One of the amendments is in relation to publishing certain technical information in the energy audit reports. Well, this would work, but then is it possible to provide incentives to buildings? So in relation to external walls, central air conditioning installations, it's possible to save energy. So is it possible to identify room to reduce the power charge? Is it possible to provide incentives? I believe you need to do more on this front. Otherwise, it'd be difficult for the industry to feel interested. If you provide tens of thousands of dollars or $100,000, 5 years later, they're not going to do it anymore. That is not effective. So I'd like to know how to keep the scheme sustainable in order to achieve the goal of energy saving. DS. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Lee. We've heard quite many views during consultation. Some say that after the energy audit is conducted, is it definitely not effective if the relevant measures aren't implemented? Well, our experience shows us for buildings that have completed the energy audits, these buildings do have the motivation to implement the energy saving measures, as this can definitely help them save electricity charges. In overseas jurisdictions, there is no such case either. There is no penalty for not implementing the measures after the energy audit is conducted. Property owners will have to make financial arrangements. Do they have to implement the measure immediately, or there may be major renovation works going on, and it's difficult to lay down any regulation or guidelines in relation to the time of implementing the measures. But as we can see, for the majority of property owners, they do implement the measures. The economic benefits themselves are already incentives, so we don't really need to provide further incentives. Member just now talked about carbon audits. Carbon audits have a much wider coverage. Energy audits are one of the areas under the carbon audits. Carbon audits also look into the construction material used as well as a whole raft of areas. This is one of the major initiatives towards achieving carbon neutrality. Carbon audits are beyond the realms of the discussion of this bill. It's not really what we can regulate. Mr. Michael Lee? Well, my point is, in the future, how will you achieve complementarity between the PUE and carbon audits? Just now you said the buildings or property owners will proactively pursue carbon neutrality. So I'd like to know how you will better work with the two power companies in Hong Kong. DS, I can see where the member is coming from. We have set up a community energy conservation fund. We also have another fund. We work with the two power companies in Hong Kong, and they will have to plow back some of the funding to the funds. There is a clawback mechanism. These funds provide different support to the industries. Say for non-residential clients, the two power companies have an upgrading scheme in relation to energy-saving equipment or installations. They help SMEs to procure even more energy-saving equipment. There is another pilot scheme on subsidizing non-profit-making non-governmental organizations. After the conduct of the audit, probably the organizations will have to get replacements of LED lights or to replace some air conditioners. These funds will provide assistance to organizations. Next member, Mr. Lam Chen Singh. Thank you, Chairman. This ordinance has been implemented for 10 odd years. The government can see certain results. After energy audits are conducted, it's not mandatory for buildings to comply with the audits and implement measures. I'd like to know what other measures do you have so that you will be more aggressive, so to speak. Say the energy audits now have a 5-year interval. Many of these buildings are government buildings. Can the government undertake after the energy audit is conducted? Buildings will do their utmost according to the recommendations of the energy audits. Will you provide simple forms for buildings or for companies so that they will, on a voluntary basis, declare what measures they have already taken? This will make it easier for you to evaluate the effectiveness of the energy audits. So when we shorten the intervals of energy audits from 10 years to 5 years, it will be easier for us to assess the impact. In relation to including hotels or guest houses, as we just now mentioned, public buildings aren't covered either. I'd like to know why. We'll have to develop new industrialization, and in the Northern Metropolis, there are a lot of new buildings in relation to new industrialization. So why aren't these buildings covered as well? Just now, the PowerPoint presentation talked about matters in relation to safeguarding national security. In this case, some buildings can be exempted. Say data centers, they are one of the examples. Cybersecurity, technological security, national security covers a very wide scope. If there are suggestions from the head of grade, the conduct of an energy audit may undermine national security, then the head of grade may make a decision, or the bureau chief can make a decision to exempt a certain building from conducting energy audits. I'd like to know more about this. DS, 3 questions. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, a member talked about energy audits. After the conduct of energy audits, how can we reward or commend buildings that have really taken the measures in relation to energy audits? Well, we can go back and think about this. Say in the future, will we launch some award schemes? Upon the implementation of the bill, we may further discuss with the EMSD further promotion. Regarding industrial buildings, I'd like to give the floor to the EMSD. But I can say a few words about the national security clauses. This is not a very simple decision. It's one made with great caution. That's why we need someone in the senior management, say the head of grade or the department head. One needs to seriously think about the situation when a building is subject to energy audit and when the conduct of an energy audit may undermine national security, then that department head will have to inform the commissioner of the or the director of the EMSD, saying that that building should be exempted from conducting an energy audit. We shouldn't cast this net too wide. It has to be in proportion to decisions. We did consult the Security Bureau, so we find this arrangement appropriate.
Well, there may be cases where a building is related to the purpose of national security, so it may not really be convenient for the assessors to conduct energy audits, and the reports cannot really be disclosed. I believe that's the case. Mr. Leung, the reason why industrial buildings are not incorporated under the law, because we have about 17,000 industrial buildings, but it only account for 4% of power generation. And there are different types of industrial facilities inside these buildings, and they are not subject to a specific energy efficiency standard. So it's not really cost effective to include them in our list of buildings. But we are now regulating the following. If there are redecoration or renovation of these buildings, they have to comply with our latest energy efficiency standards. We will consider ways and means to continue to encourage these buildings to save energy. Now, for industrial buildings, there are public places with air conditioning, and at the lift lobbies, for instance, I believe the space is relatively small compared to the total floor area. Mr. Tony Tse, I think many people in Hong Kong support environmental protection and also emission reduction. As mentioned in the paper, 9% of our power is being consumed by buildings, and over 50% of our carbon emission is related to generating electricity for buildings. So it is an important thing to enhance buildings' energy efficiency. So I welcome the amendments to the bill. And I also appreciate the fact that the government has been very prudent in proposing the amendments in weighing the actual gains and also the feasibility. So only 2 more types of buildings are included to the current list, and the government has promised to proceed in a gradual and prudent manner. But of course, you have a target. You should have a plan for adding new types of buildings. And I'd also like to know the proportion of power consumption. Well, you say there are only 3,000 buildings against 40,000 buildings in Hong Kong, but the power consumption may not be proportional to the ratio of such buildings. So you should tell us how significant will it be when it comes to power saving. And I also like to ask about the standards, whether we're talking about new buildings or existing buildings. When energy audits are conducted, they have to comply with the code. That is the energy audit code, which will be reviewed every 3 years. I'd like to know the procedures for reviewing the code. I believe the industry will be consulted, right? Can you tell us the procedures? The cost for an energy audit is insignificant. But then the intervals for energy audits will be shortened. That will have manpower implications. You have increased manpower in terms of REAs. I'd like to know the potential manpower supply, because you don't know whether people will come forward to be REAs, but can you tell us the potential manpower supply? And for publishing certain technical information in energy audit reports that will enhance the transparency, but you need to provide incentive for people. If you grade these buildings in terms of energy efficiency, now for instance, if it is a platinum grade, then it's easy for people to understand. Laymen may not easily understand technical information. It's just like the purchase of electrical appliances. If the energy efficiency is grade 1, then people will be more incentivized to buy them. P.S. I thank Mr. Jie for putting the questions to us. The question is, how frequent will we review the energy audit code or the current regime? Our plan is once every 5 years. We have to wait for about 5 years because it is a fair period for us to collect data and to assess the operation of the bill. As for the threshold of 7,000 meters of GFA and the percentage of power consumed by these buildings. Now, if the cutoff line is 7,000 square meters in GFA, we have only excluded 10% of power consumption. 90% of the power consumption will be regulated under the bill. So we believe the cutoff line of 7,000 square meters is appropriate at this moment. Now, if the cutoff line is 5,000 square meters, we will be talking about over 90% of the total power consumption. Let me clarify here. Upon passage of the bill, I'd like to know the percentage of power consumption by regulated buildings. If we know it is 60% or 70%, then we will know that you are targeting buildings that are consuming the largest proportion of buildings. All right. We've got other data. After the amendments, now for building efficiency standards, we'll be covering 66% of electricity consumption by buildings in Hong Kong. We will exclude residential buildings and heritage buildings, churches, etc. For energy audit, once the amendments are passed, we're going to cover 24% electricity consumption by buildings. For residential buildings and unregulated buildings, they are outside this 24%. I think you were asking about this, right? And as for manpower supply, we have about 900 persons registered as REAs. Among the 900, 300 are more active in conducting energy audits and energy efficiency related work. After the amendments, there will be 80 corporate members of the Hong Kong IE or 300 members of the HKIQEP yet to be registered as REAs. That is to say, if they're all registered, we will have about 400 more. We believe there should be sufficient manpower supply. After the amendments, there will be about 600 buildings every year requiring energy audits. So I believe there should be sufficient manpower to do the audits. There will not be any pressure to raise the fees. And we have also improved the procedures for energy audits. We have standardized energy audit reports so that building owners and these REAs can just follow the standard form that will help to streamline the procedures and thus lower the cost. And that is, there will not be too much pressure on the cost. And after an energy audit is done, and if the improvement measures are taken, can we grade those buildings? I defer to UMSD. Yes, Mr. Dare made a very good point. Will we consider a grading system after energy audits are done? This is exactly what we have in mind. We need the statutory power to disclose the information, technical information. Usually there will be a coefficient representing the energy efficiency. We have started consultation sessions with the industry to discuss the proposed grading system. Mr. Dare asked about how frequent we will review the energy audit code. It will be done once every 3 years. We will discuss with the sector. The latest version, 2024, has enhanced energy efficiency by 20% compared with the last code. All right. Any follow-up? If not, I'd like to know the current state of operation of the building efficiency and buildings energy efficiency ordinance. Now, you have got the standards and also every 10-year energy audits. I'd like to know how many cases of irregularities have you found, so that we can be assured that buildings will not be penalized or our years will not be penalized. Of course, there may be new practices after the amendments, but if the operation has been satisfactory so far, we don't have to be worried about the amendments. Since 2012, 300 notices for improvement has been issued by the EMSD. Among the 300 notices, over 200 were about yet to conduct energy audits, and the others were failure to comply with requirements for new buildings or failure to comply with retrofitting works. Usually, the situations was rectified. There was only prosecution in 9 cases and fines made an hour in the range of $9,000 to $12,000. So we have reviewed these 9 cases. 8 cases involve small commercial buildings, no less than 7 square meters in GFA. So once the bill is passed, these 8 cases will not be breaches. So we believe there won't be a substantial surge in the number of prosecutions after the bill is amended. All right. Every year, the EMSD has got publicity campaigns and competition in energy consumption involving not just the commercial sector, but schools as well. They've also encouraged household users to carry out power consumption measures. So enforcement and legislation is one thing, publication and publicity and public education is just as important. With the amendments, will buildings carry out measures to lower energy consumption? Now, actually, the rectification may be very simple. For instance, this air conditioning system is consuming too much power because the temperature is set too low. You just raise the temperature and then a lot of power can be saved. And in some cases, facilities may have to be upgraded, and this is a commercial decision. The every 5-year energy audit will let users understand that they can actually save money by carrying out these remedy work.
And just now, members mentioned the publication of information, technical information. When one obtains a rating of platinum, then this is an incentive for them as well. Mr. Benson Look. Thank you, Chairman. I speak in support of the Buildings Energy Efficiency Amendment Bill 2025. All along, I've been advocating ESG. I want different enterprises to fare better in this regard. This bill is aimed at saving power generation. I can see that the goals are quite ambitious. I have some questions. Upon the enactment of the bill, it is hoped that in 2035, a total of 500 million kilowatts of our electricity will be saved. It'd be definitely good if we can achieve this. Just now we talked about whether there are any other rewards or incentives. In the electrical paper, it mentions that buildings will be able to save electricity charges, but owing to individual financial reasons, buildings will consider whether to implement the measures proposed in the energy audit or not. Now, the economy is not doing very well. In relation to the upgrading process, it may not be up to our expectation. So do you have any measures to ensure in 2035 we'll achieve the goal of saving 500 million kilowatts of our electricity? My next question is that the interval of energy audits will be shortened, and we need more professionals to be responsible for conducting energy audits. This is reasonable. So I see that the scope of REA is proposed to be expanded to cover more professionals. I'm not sure if other members have already asked this question. How many qualified professionals do we have, and what is the number of professionals that we will have upon the enactment of the bill? Well, the administration has already answered this question. All right, excuse me, I was away from this meeting. I went to another meeting. All right. There were different rounds of consultation. Different stakeholders were consulted, and I can see that a business impact assessment was conducted. I'd like to know, among the stakeholders you consulted, what was their feedback? Any feedback that we should draw reference from? Thank you. DS? Thank you, Chairman. Just now, we already explained why we didn't make it a mandatory requirement to implement the energy-saving measures proposed in the energy audits. We want to adopt a positive approach we need to take into account the actual conditions of different buildings, including the financial position of different buildings or building owners. They are factors at play in relation to whether measures will be implemented. If buildings or building owners have financial difficulty or if they require technical support, I believe EMSD will provide advice. Regarding energy audits, as we explained just now, in the scheme of control agreement of the two power companies in Hong Kong, there are some funds or funding schemes that will provide incentives to companies. Say in the community fund and in the new energy efficiency fund, there are NGOs or schools that will take measures after the conduct of energy audits. Regarding BIA, that is Business Impact Assessment, we may share with members the findings of the BIA. We met with 28 representatives. They are from different industries. They are concerned that there is now a new form in relation to the publication of technical information. They voice concerns about privacy. And we explained to stakeholders that we won't show sensitive information, say the plan, the sketch on the data disclosure forms. And there will be discussion on what appropriate information to be included on the data disclosure form. For smaller chambers of commerce, they said that there might be a significant impact on SMEs. That's exactly why we had a threshold of 7,000 square meters. Only those with a floor area above 7,000 square meters will be subject to energy audits. Some say the transitional period is another matter of concern. We initially thought about having a 12-month transitional period, but then after considering the situation, we have decided to make it 15 months. There are standard forms in relation to energy audits, and the assessors, that is the REA, will determine what information is necessary. There will be standard criteria for organizations that have financial difficulties. Will they receive subsidies? We'll actively consider this issue. And we will also be liaising with the two power companies in Hong Kong in relation to the New Energy Efficiency Fund. Regarding the feedback we will receive, we'll suitably incorporate the feedback into the amendment bill. Thank you. 2 members have pressed the button to request to speak in the second round. So we may be able to start clause-by-clause scrutiny today. Let's start with Mr. Chen Siu-hong. Thank you, Chairman. Just now, member mentioned the proposal of energy labels. This is exactly what I want the administration to think as well. For electrical appliances, there are different classes or grades, say 1, 2, 3. If we can adopt the same concept and apply the same system to buildings, then we may provide further incentives to buildings. After the implementation of the energy audit system, there will be improvement. Otherwise, if the buildings are not going to put the suggestion into practice, they will have to explain to different stakeholders when their ratings have dropped. I'd like to ask the DS. There are 9 more types of buildings. One of them is hotel or guest houses. For new buildings or those with major retrofitting works, energy audits are compulsory, but then you didn't add 4 main categories. 2 of the categories are hotels or guest houses, as well as common areas of a residential building. Some say that, the administration just now said that hotels or guest houses are similar to residential premises, but that is not the case. Say hotels or guest houses have plazas, shopping areas, catering areas, and so on. So they should be subject to regulation. After you have included these under the scope of energy audits, for newly constructed buildings or those carrying out major retrofitting works, they will have to comply with the energy efficiency standards. But 5 years later, if the buildings don't repair and maintain as they should have, then what? If there is no energy audit after the 5-year threshold, the situation may deteriorate 1 year after another. Then you won't be able to achieve the policy target. You should ask them to provide a report to you. That will make more sense. DS? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chen, for talking about the building label or energy label. Just now, the EMSD already said this bill amendment is an opportunity. We will collate the figures or the energy audit report's findings. So in the future, when we implement a building label benchmarking scheme, that will provide more information in relation to the implementation of the scheme, we'll be able to collect more concrete information or figures. In relation to another question that is about hotels or guest houses, I do understand the member's point. For newly constructed buildings or those carrying out major retrofitting works, why energy audits aren't included when the energy efficiency standards of BSIs are included? Well, guest houses are quite different. Their power consumption is very low, maybe as low as 0.1%. It's not the case that we're not going to regulate hotels and guest houses, but we'd like to liaise more with the industry. We need more time to think about the implementation details. We need to think how we can help them. So in the next phase, we may include hotels and guest houses into the scope of regulation. Mr. Chen, yes, I understand. I do agree with DS. This time you have a threshold of 7,000 square meters. For guest houses, I cannot imagine any guest houses that are larger than 7,000 square meters, so they are exempted. For hotels, some hotels may have 20 to 30 stories. In addition to other commercial elements, say shopping center, conference rooms, and so on. They are commercial buildings. They are a complex comprising hotels and commercial use. If you don't put hotels or guest houses in the scope of regulation subject to energy audits, so do they need to conduct an energy audit? Are they a commercial building or are they a hotel or guest house? Chairman, so when a building is a commercial building, then it is subject to energy audits. What about a standalone hotel? In this case, why isn't it subject to energy audits? The DS just now mentioned they might be included in the second phase. And Mr. Chen asked, then why not in this round? Why don't you include it in this round?
Thank you, Mr. Chen, for your question. Now, during consultation, we received views And yes, hotels are mainly for residential purpose. If they're over 7,000 square meters in GFA, is quite sizable, but still the use is mainly residential. It's not that we will exclude them forever. It's just that for the time being, we don't intend them to add them to the list of regulated buildings. And the follow-up, I can ask a follow-up question later. Well, why don't you do it now? Because we only have Mr. Tony there after you. Now, a piece of legislation must have certainty. The ordinance now is very certain. New hotels and guest houses are included. But now for the regular energy audits, they are not included. That may make it ambiguous for hotel owners or operators. So owners may not know now for a building there are 5 floors that are hotels and the rest may be service apartments or commercial premises. There are ample such examples. So simply by having the word hotel, does that mean that the building is exempted from regular energy audits? Now, in our ordinance, we have a definition for hotels because hotels have to be registered. We have about 330,000 hotel buildings. Under the registration system, registered hotels are hotels under the bill. So for this round of amendments, such buildings do not have to carry out regular energy audits. Well, there isn't any change brought about by these amendments. Now, in the current in the bill, now for renovation works, etc., they have to comply with the energy efficiency buildings, but not the energy audits. So for these two categories, they haven't been excluded from the amendments. We've only just added another 9 types of buildings. Yes. You have not added hotels and guest house to the types of buildings. So if it is newly constructed, it must comply with the energy efficiency standards, though they don't have to conduct regular energy audits. The amendment bill hasn't changed the status quo. Your question is whether hotels will be added in the next round of amendment, perhaps, but if they already meet the energy efficiency standards, then you should give them recommendations. Perhaps a few years down the road, regular energy audits should be done, although you don't mandate it in the bill. And I think this is already the situation under the ordinance. Because during public consultation, we received inquiries from the hotel industry. Perhaps they're concerned about the cost. When it comes to energy audits, all buildings should be treated the same. Because if some of the owners claim difficulties, will you accept them as well? Agree that by providing an exemption for buildings not exceeding 7,000 meters square in size, that is okay because smaller hotels are already exempted. But if we talk about larger hotels exceeding 7,000 meters in GFA, they have central air conditioning, so they should be in a position to receive energy audits in order to lower power consumption. But I noted the point the government might not want to include hotels in this round of amendment, but a few years down the road, when you have the next round of amendment, please consider adding hotels. for energy audits to improve energy efficiency. Now, for the concern raised by Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, now for the 13 types of buildings, there are types similar to the situation of hotels, such as the common area of a residential building, common area of a portion of a composite building. Now, if they are newly constructed, they have to follow or comply with the energy efficiency standards, but no energy audits are required. So if we go by Mr. Chen's suggestion, even these types of buildings have to be included. I think we respect this considered decision by the government to keep it this way. So there are types of buildings that have to comply with the energy efficiency standards, though they are not yet required to conduct energy audits. So do we want to cover everything in one go? If this is the request of members, I'm afraid the bill has to be rewritten. Mr. Tony Zhang. Thank you, Chair. Now, I'm a pragmatic person. Now, buildings that have higher power consumption, such as data centers, well, they will continue to grow in number. We should adopt a gradual approach, because if we want to cover everything in one go, there may be issues. I have a follow-up question. For new buildings or major renovations, energy audits are required. I believe for existing buildings, the government will take measures to encourage buildings to improve their energy efficiency. If there are such measures, do let us know. If not, I think it is time the government started to do it. The majority of our buildings are existing ones. And the EMSD has mentioned the Building Efficiency Code, and it will be reviewed once every 3 years from 2015 to 2024. There's been a reduction in energy consumption by 20%. That means we have seen significant improvement. I'd like to know, in setting these standards, what are the major considerations? For instance, a reduction of 20% in power consumption. There must be considerations when you set the standards. So I'd like to know what are they. And in Annex D of the brief, it is mentioned that about 400 buildings will have to carry out energy audits requiring $4 million per year on the part of the government. I'd like to know how this figure is arrived at. There are experts within the EMSD. I'd like to know whether EMSD staff will do the energy audits themselves, or will you outsource the work to the private sector? May I be enlightened? Thank you. P.S. Thank you, Mr. Zhe, for your questions. The first is, what measures do we have to incentivize buildings to save energy? Even for buildings not regulated under the ordinance, EMS staff has encouraged buildings to carry out voluntary energy audits and to readjust their energy consumption. There are seminars as well as guidelines for buildings, so that if they would like to do it voluntarily, there are guidelines to go by. And then we have also a registration scheme for building efficiency. This is a way to encourage buildings to enhance their energy efficiency. If the energy performance exceeds the statutory requirements, and if it has got BEAM Plus certification or other recognized certification by other bodies and by the Hong Kong Green Building Council, they can join this scheme. Lighting, air conditioning installations, elevators, escalators, and building services installations will involve capital costs. There can be expedited tax deductions. Instead of spreading over 5 years, the deduction can be achieved in 1 year. So we're using tax incentives to encourage unregulated buildings to conduct all the reports and for recalibration in order to enhance efficiency. As for the considerations behind our codes and standards, I defer to the EMSD. We will start with seminars with the industry in assessing or in reviewing our building energy code. It all depends on whether there are upgrades available in the market. Take air conditioning system as an example. If the coefficient is 5 now, can that be further raised to 5.2? So we maintain our dialogue with the sectors. From 2015 to 2024, the overall efficiency has been raised by 20%, and that is how the codes are revised. Mr. Tong Lize, you have a follow-up question? Speaker is off mic. What about government buildings? There are 400 government buildings. We used to have 250 government buildings receiving energy audits. The average cost was about $40,000 to $50,000 per building. So, spreading over 5 years, for the 400 government buildings, we need about $4 million per year. As regards whether the audits will be done by the EMSD or outsourced, because as the member may know, these buildings are managed by their respective bureaus or departments. So EMSD operates on a trading fund. Most government departments patronize the EMSD trading fund. So it will be for these bureaus and departments to decide. They can use the service of the EMSD or REAs in the market. They can do quotations and then choose either the EMSD or external REAs. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. Regarding adding more qualifications eligible registration as REAs now, Chair, we have to commend you for sponsoring a bill to make Hong Kong IQEA a recognized professional body. And at the Bills Committee to consider the bill, we asked once Hong Kong IQEA became a statutory body, what recognition would be given by the government. The EPD told us that there would be careful consideration. Now, professional bodies of Hong Kong IQEP now can be eligible for registration as REAs. This is something we welcome. That aside, we have to gatekeep. We cannot just include anyone with that qualification. First, you will add the energy qualified environmental professionals. The Hong Kong IQEP is a statutory body. If in future there are further bodies or professional institutes that are considered eligible, so what are the criteria? Will you consider their status, or will there be comparable and commensurate world or international bodies equally eligible? Will these be your considerations?
My another question, I'd like to ask about the concept of recalibration. The EMSD has been regarding the replacement of old parts to improve the energy efficiency, as other members have mentioned, this will have to be conducted by the company. If companies can see cost effectiveness or a reduction of electricity charges, recalibration is very important. Not only are energy audits conducted every year, but this can also help improve the efficiency of energy consumption. The EMSD published technical guidelines. I'd like to ask the EMSD, what is the effectiveness of the scheme? If the scheme has yielded good results, why don't you include recalibration in the scope of regulation as well? Why don't you require the conduct of energy audits as well as recalibration? What is standing in the way of making it a statutory requirement? Thank you. DS, well, I'll take the question about the REA first, then I will defer to the EMSD. Now we see if the professionals have the necessary know-how or experience to be an REA registered energy assessor. So we keep the gate very strictly here. Even if we have already included engineers in the energy sector as well as in the Hong Kong IQEP, the EMSD interviews every single applicant. It ensures that the applicant has the necessary background, work experience in relation to the energy sector. Only then will these applicants be allowed to be registered as an REA. It's not just that they belong to a certain association, then they will automatically become qualified to be an REA. We take into account the actual know-how and work experience. There are different levels of members under the IQEP. To be a professional member of the IQEP, one needs to have a bachelor degree in addition to 5 years of relevant work experience. One also needs to have 3 years of experience of holding a certain position. So we only cover professional members of the IQEP. We have made careful assessments. We want to increase manpower to have a larger pool of professionals to help us with conducting energy audits. In relation to recalibration, I will give the floor to Mr. Leung. Yes, indeed, recalibration is a very important concept. It can help to save energy. actually we have a requirement of conducting an energy audit that needs to be a report. And the purpose is to identify energy saving potential. If the assessor is of the view that it is suitable to put in place recalibration, then in the report, the assessor will jot down it is suitable to have recalibration. We don't just publish technical guidelines. Starting from 2019, we have been working with the Hong Kong Green Building Council to provide training and certification for professionals. We have already trained over 2,500 professionals since the launch of the scheme. We'll continue to work hard on this front. Thank you. Chairman, well, if no members would like to speak on the policy discussion of the bill, we'll start with the clause-by-clause scrutiny of the bill. Our meeting will run until 1:45 today. Members, please take note, on the 7th of April, the legal advisor wrote the administration in relation to the bill. Please refer to CB-2638/2025-02. The administration has already provided a response. CB-2649/2025-01. In the course of scrutiny, the legal advisor will remind us of what to take note of. The legal advisor may also speak on some specific points. Questions may be put to the administration. Now we may start with scrutinizing the Chinese text of the bill. Members, of course, can raise questions in relation to any English text. Now we start with the long title as printed in the blue bill of the bill. Which one will take us through the bill? All right, Mr. Derek Chow, Acting Principal Assistant Secretary. Thank you. The long title is that the bill is aimed at amending the Buildings Energy Efficiency Ordinance and its subsidiary legislation to extend the scope of regulation to more types of buildings, to provide for publication of certain technical information in energy audit reports, and to shorten the intervals of energy audit to be carried out in respect of specific or specified buildings, and to provide for related matters. Any views? No? All right, this ordinance has been implemented for 10 odd years. This is very effective in promoting energy saving and emission reduction. Any views or questions on the long title of the bill? If no, yes, we'll pass. All right, let's move on to the marked up copy of the bill. Oh, just a minute. We still have something to cover. It's in the blue bill. Part 1, Preliminary. Clause 1, Short Title and Commencement. This ordinance may be cited as the Buildings Energy Efficiency Amendment Ordinance 2025. 2. This ordinance comes into operation on a date to be appointed by the Secretary for Environment and Ecology by notice published in the Gazette. And I will give you further details in a moment. Clause 2, Enactments amended. The enactments specified in Parts 2 and 3 are amended as set out in those parts. And the principal legislation is Buildings Energy Efficiency Ordinance as well as its subsidiary legislation. That is CAP 610B. It's the Buildings Energy Efficiency Register Energy Assessors Regulation. It's CAP 610 sub-legislation B. Any views? No? Please continue. All right. Members can now refer to the marked up copy. Let's read page 1 of the Chinese marked up copy. All right. It's page 0001. we'll add 3 more definitions. 3 definitions are data center, data disclosure form, and the relevant date. I'll start with the data disclosure form. It means a data disclosure form mentioned in section 22. It is the technical information to be published for the public in the energy audit reports. The information will be covered on the data disclosure form. As we said in the formulation of the form, the EMSD will consult the industry. Mr. Tony Te, you've pressed the button. Do you have any question? Well, probably I pressed the button early. All right, let's continue with the scrutiny first. Relevant date, it means the date on which Part 2, except Sections 8 and 9 of the Buildings Energy Efficiency Amendment Ordinance 2025 comes into operation. Sections 8 and 9, they're in relation to the standards of registering as an REA. It will come into operation 3 months after the implementation of the bill, whereas the remaining part will come into effect 15 months after the implementation of the bill. It refers to the date when the ordinance comes into operation. To give you an example, if this ordinance comes into operation in June 2025, then 15 months later, it is September 2026. That is the date on which the ordinance will come into operation. A commencement notice will be published and we will submit later on. It is subject to negative vetting by the Legislative Council. It is in relation to the definition for relevant dates. In relation to data centers, data center means a place for housing computer systems, servers, telecommunications equipment, and associated support components in a secure and controlled environment. Let's pause. Mr. Tony Te, I'd like to ask the Chinese definition of the term data center. It mentions housing. What if one simply puts a system over there? Is that housing as well? You also mentioned telecommunications equipment, servers, and so on. If one only store one of these pieces of equipment, does one fall into the category of a data center as well? Yes, I agree. Because in the Legislative Council, we also store or house server. So are we a data center? DS, over to you. Thank you. I'll take the question from Mr. Tony Te. Data center means a place for housing computer systems, servers, telecommunications equipment, and associated support components in a secure and controlled environment. We have drawn reference from the Lands Department. It's from a document. It's about exemption. It's a practice note issued by the Lands Department. There are remarks provided by the practice notes. It provides uninterrupted power supply, heat dissipation, environmental control, security, fire control, and so on. So just now, Mr. Tony Te talked about a place for housing computer systems, servers, telecommunications equipment. According to the bill or to the ordinance, we won't define it as a data center. Well, but by the looks of by the text, we can see in the ordinance it's difficult to make that distinction. The purpose may be the key. But then this is a clause that we'll have to scrutinize. The purpose, as you said, is to target the buildings that use more energy consumption. So when we read the definition of the term, we don't quite get it. Just like the chairman said, when I store something or house something in the warehouse, does it count? Is it counted as well by the text? It's difficult to understand the meaning. In the English version, it means it said housing. That is in Chinese, 全方. In English, is housing. The coverage of housing is actually quite wide. Readers may not be able to understand just from the text. The legal advisor may have other concerns, but it's not quite clear.
Well, it's just an example I quoted just now. In this electrical complex, we have the server center. Following this direction will be called. It's not just for housing these facilities, rather, it is in operation. It has got telecommunication equipment and also the supporting components. So our server center may be regarded or defined as a data center. So because either one will suffice. All right. Mr. Lee Chan-keung and Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, as well as Mr. Andrew Lam, have questions. Mr. Lee Chan-keung. Chair, I agree with Mr. Tong Li-tze. You should specify the number of computer systems and servers, etc., before a certain place falls under the definition of data center. Shouldn't we provide a clearer definition? Otherwise, even at home, we can have a computer, a server, a telecommunications equipment, and even micro and small and medium-sized enterprises have such equipment, and they may become data centers under this definition. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong and Mr. Andrew Lam on the same point, and our legal advisor has something to say as well. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong. The definition for data center is too simple here. When we discussed policy issues of the government in the PowerPoint, as well as in our discussion, we're told the 7 buildings with GFA not exceeding 7,000 square meters would be excluded, with the exception of data centers. The definition of data centers here is too simple. Should we use size to define a data center, or the scale of a data center? Now, regardless of the size or scale, once a place is called a data center, and we have a building or a room with the facilities listed here, it will be called a data center. It is difficult for the industry or stakeholders to comply with this piece of legislation. It's the government's concern that the power consumption per square meter of a data center is so high that you don't offer any exemption as well. So perhaps you should use the power consumption in setting the limit. For instance, we have a data locker with servers. The scope is too small. There is no energy audit required. Perhaps you should use the power consumption per square meters to define or to decide whether such a place should be called. Mr. Andrew Lam, I'm on the same point. Now, the focus is on housing here. The practice note from the Lands Department, if my memory serves me, because they have to seek an exemption. So they also have requirements such as connection to power. So the focus is on the operation. I think there is room for this definition to be amended so that without being too complicated, you should bring out the real intention. I think the intention is not to regulate a room housing such facilities, but the definition as it is drafted now will focus on housing or storage. I strongly urge you to revise this definition. Perhaps we should hear from the legal advisor first before we invite the administration to respond. Thank you. In fact, we've written to the administration on the clarity of this definition, and the administration gave us the same reply as it did to members just now, and that is reference to the practice note. But then the practice note is not in the ordinance, nor would it be in the bill. There is no reference to the practice note whatsoever in the bill. We were not aware of the existence of that practice note. Even in the administration's reply, there is mention of supporting components, and according to the practice note, there is definition for such components. And according to a reply, a place simply used for storing computer systems, servers, etc. will not be considered a data center. So for clarity's sake, will the administration add the definition for the supporting components and to add that a place simply used for storing or housing such facilities will not make it a data center? Well, as I mentioned, we have a server center in Lachko. It's not really a place for housing the servers. It is in operation. Now, if we go by this definition, Lachko will become a data center. Administration, I thank members for their suggestions. Let us explain the current drafting, but we promise to reconsider views expressed by members. Maybe there's room for reviewing the drafting. The purpose here, or the focus here, is a building mainly for data centers. For instance, even in a hospital, there is a server room, but the hospital is not mainly a data center. It is there for medical purpose, so we consider it a hospital. In Schedules 1 and 4, we talked about buildings mainly occupied for data centers, and also portions of the building mainly used as a data center. So for a building with just a server room, it will not be caught by this definition. And apart from the word housing in the definition, our focus is on in a secure and controlled environment. And what is a secure and controlled environment? In my reply, I explained a little bit. For instance, whether there is proper enclosure, and whether there is a security system, and whether the environmental conditions, including humidity, or temperature, pressure, or dust particles, etc., make it a secure and controlled environment. The legal advisor suggested that we make the definition clearer. We promise to get back to you later. It seems that two more members would like to speak on this matter. We may go beyond 12:45, but let us finish this point first because it is quite an important point. Mr. Chen Xiu-hong, I do get the administration's rationale, but then an ordinary person will be baffled by this definition. And there is also the point raised by the legal advisor. I think we can consider Mr. Andrew Lam's suggestion. Let me give you an extreme example. I may be a telecommunications equipment supplier. I've got a room for storing the servers or data lockers. Will that place become a data center? So the focus should be storage as well as usage to make it complete. Of course, what the PS said, put things in context. But in this definition, you only talked about housing. So if I have a vacant room for storing such components and they may be transported or transferred to other data centers. So can you please consider this scenario and improve your definition? Mr. Andrew Lam, I just want to thank the PS for considering our point. Now, logistics is an important industry in Hong Kong. There are warehouses and storage with controlled humidity and temperature environment. They may be caught. I don't think you will regard that as a data center, but it may be caught by this definition. So please consider, do not just use the word housing in your definition. You should add another component. So to summarize, we understand by and large the kind of data centers you are talking about. But the definition here is a catch-all drafting. All rooms with servers and other components kept there will be caught. And I think this is quite an important point that warrants further consideration. It's not yet 12:45. Why don't we go on? Thank you. Then, members, please go to page 2 of the marked up copy. Clause 4 of the bill. The first part. The purpose is to make a distinction between the 13 or 11 types of buildings already covered and also 2 new types of buildings, and the commencement date will be different. For the first part, the relevant date will still be the 21st of September 2012. And for the 2 types of new buildings, now that is it will be the commencement of building works for superstructure construction is given after the relevant date. Any question on this? Mr. Chen Xiu-hong and Mr. Andrew Lam. Subsection 1 of 7, even the Chinese is hard to understand. And the critical date is after the 21st of September 2012. Can you tell us? Consent given to the commencement of building works after that relevant date. Perhaps we should put it in historical context. Can you tell us the background, please? In subsection 2, of 7, we already have this wording. We only replace the term commencement date with an actual date, that is the 21st of September 2012, because we don't rule the possibility that some buildings might have been missed. Now, if the 13 types of buildings did not comply with the standards when they were first built, we could take retrospective action.
All right. I will extend the meeting by 10 minutes to allow Mr. Andrew Lam to ask his questions. After that, we'll wrap up the meeting today. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chen. If a consent is given after the 21st of September 2012, well, it's only referring to energy efficiency standards. That's exactly why we need to make it clear. If a building at the time of construction slipped through the net, then we still reserve the power to take enforcement action. But what baffled me is that it's some 10 years after 2012. So you aren't sitting on your hands. In your record, are there any buildings whose status you aren't sure about yet? Well, that's not the case. When we take enforcement action, we draw reference from the surveys conducted by the buildings department. We use that as the basis. We've issued quite a number of improvement notices or letters. We invoked this ordinance or this provision. That's exactly why we need to keep this provision. Next, Mr. Andrew Lam. Thank you, Chairman. You use superstructure in the text. What is your own definition of superstructure? Of course, I understand the buildings department does have their own definition, but we're talking about other structures, say MTR stations. What about those in caverns? We have data centers in caverns. Some space in caverns is being used as data center. So I'd like to know what your definition of superstructure is. In section 2, there's a definition of consent to the commencement of building works. It sets out very clearly that refers to section 14 of the Buildings Ordinance. That is the definition given by the building authority, and that definition is the definition we're using in this amendment bill. So it's not a new definition, right? No, it's not a new one. Well, I have to go back and do some homework before asking another question. When it comes to MTR stations, I brought up this point because now you've added superstructure, so I'd like to ask the legal advisor, will a special situation arise? Or if you're convinced it's free of any problems, then I'll go back and do some homework about this. Well, of course, you can go back to study this matter, and if you have any views, you can raise your views at the next meeting. If members have no more views on this paragraph, let's stop the meeting right here. The next meeting will take place on the 2nd of May, Friday, from 8:30 to 10:30. If members have no other questions, then meeting adjourned. Thank you, members.